What's up, family? Welcome back to the channel. I'm so glad that you're here hanging out with me. I was actually super nervous that I wasn't going to be able to squeeze a video in today, but it looks like it worked out. So I'm excited about that. And today we're going to be finishing up on this report on Black non-religious Americans that we started on. Now, honestly, I said I closed it out last week, but I actually skipped just a few more sections, or not. Yeah, I skipped it. I got so excited, got so into the conversation at the end of that last one that there were 2 or 3 more pages of information that I didn't hit, and I wanted to come back and do this justice. And so we'll round this conversation up today, talking about Black Nonbelievers from the standpoint of the Black Non-Religious Americans report, but then we're going to continue this series. And so I don't know if we'll just go into the second season or if we'll just keep rolling right along. But we're going to continue this series because there's a lot of Black non-believers that I love to talk about. Some who have had an incredible influence on my life from afar. One who I mentioned a few times on this channel, Hubert Henry Harrison. Learning about him was incredibly freeing, liberating for me. But then there are a myriad of others, because when it comes to a community that is so rich in heritage and cultural experience, Black non-belief comes in all shapes, sizes, and forms. But let's be honest, across the spectrum of all ethnic or racial experiences with belief, it's going to come in a lot of different shapes and sizes. And so we'll be committing this series to talking through all of the nuances. As all is a pretty absolute term. We'll be exploring as many of the nuances as possible. So before we get into today's conversation, please make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that alert notification bell. Consider joining, supporting, or connecting with this community, channel, or content in any way that makes sense for you. And then, of course, check out our merch, because we have some of the dopest fucking merch in the game, man. And I'm not saying it just to say it. Like, it's dope merch. Like, y'all know me. I wouldn't lie to you, you know. All right, so let's jump into this conversation. I'm still struggling with what we're going to title this one. I have a few ideas, um, but we'll just kind of jump into where we left off last time. And so this first part starts with: understand that racism, discrimination, and other issues that have a disparate impact on Black non-religious people are secular issues. And that's actually a strong stance, and it's one that I agree with. It's one that I often try to remind secular people of, not just when it comes to Black people, but just about issues. Period. All issues, if they're not dealing with some type of supernaturalism, are secular issues. But then, to be clear, because we know, or at least from our experience, we don't have any relationship with anything supernatural, then even those experiences that are alleged to be supernatural are still dealing with secular experiences, because we live not we didn't become we didn't make the world secular. You know what I'm saying? We didn't become a secular society and then secularize the world. The world we live, secularization is a natural response to realizing that we live in a secular world. I don't often use the dynamics or the extremes of secular versus sacred, because sacred is an incredibly human word, and that's not one I don't think we should I don't think we should give that away. And again, I don't think we should give anything away. All of it, nothing that exists in religion comes from a God. It all comes from the mind of some human somewhere. So it is all owned by humanity. But anyway, I'm getting onto a rabbit trail. But the big point is, moving from the sacred to the secular in this context. And again, I don't like using that dynamic a lot, but I do think it works here. Was moving from an understanding that the planet we lived on wasn't a sacred place in the sense that everything didn't revolve around it. This wasn't this heavenly magical, place. It's just a rock, and we own it. You know what I'm saying? And we kind of by ourselves. That thought was likely the first thought to, for us to realize, like, oh yeah, this is a secular place that we live in. Because I mean, even when some people go through deconversion, that's a part of the thought process that you end up going through. Is in, at least for me, um, was God shifted in my mind from a sacred God to a secular God, in the sense that God became the more and more I studied God, the more and more I studied the people of God, the more and more I studied things that were attributed to God. I begin to, and of course, the more and more I begin to study just the natural world we live in. As I think one of the videos I did this week, I just began to realize that God is incredibly irrelevant, you know. But before getting to irrelevant, the place that you typically get to is God is incredibly indifferent, you know, that God doesn't seem to do anything one way or the other. And it's that indifference of God that leads you to the irrelevance of God. But of course, what normally gets you to the indifference of God is seeing all the suffering in the world. And so then you typically see the ugliness of God. And some people get stuck there. God is just ugly. To me, God is a character in a book. And so God, like all characters in all books, or just like all characters, period, God is nuanced. But definitely I went from that part, no, God is ugly, God is mean, God is horrible. Then to realizing, nope, God is just kind of indifferent. To realizing, nope, that's not even God at all. Life is indifferent. It happens to us at all. And so if it's life that's indifferent, then just God is completely irrelevant. If God has no capacity to intervene with the indifference of life, then God has no utility. Or at least I have no utility in the belief of God, such as my life has demonstrated, in very real ways. These are things that, boy, I've been incredibly averse to being like a motivational speaker or anything, but I do train people and I do coach people and stuff like that. But even that I didn't do until I had some type of results in my life. That weren't based off of any woo system, because that's the stuff that made me uncomfortable even as a pastor. um, is like, how are you guaranteeing people results off of systems that aren't systematic? Like, how are you guaranteeing results off of systems that can't be demonstrated, they can't be measured? And so I've never really liked stuff like that. But because I have achieved some pretty dynamic results in my life, just from a holistic perspective. Again, I was over 580 pounds, and for the past 2 years, I've been at 200. Yeah, you know what I'm saying. Um, but not only that, my life has changed drastically, financially, and that was before YouTube. YouTube is still just a drop in the bucket. I'm very appreciative for that drop in the bucket. But as you can see, because of the way that I have to work, it ain't that big of a drop yet. But no, my life changed significantly because I had to change my mind about a lot of things, and um, I had to deal with my own sense of magical thinking, which is perfect. This is full circle right here, because I was talking about this idea of recognizing that Black non-belief, just like white non-belief, Hispanic non-belief, Asian non-belief, Hindu non-belief, what that last part doesn't work quite right, Indian non-belief, whatever it is, it's all going to be incredibly nuanced, and it almost never. And the only reason I don't say never is because I don't really like absolutes, but it almost never is a case where everybody who's a non-believer is an atheist. It's almost never that everybody who is a non-believer is a embraced it, has embraced a natural worldview. You know what I'm saying? It's almost never that everybody who becomes a non-believer even embraces a secular worldview. There are people who are non-believers that still think being gay is wrong. As we can see, the trans movement like disrupted the non-believing community like a mug, you know, because I think we're beginning to realize this thing that um, labels do not define people, you know. And so I think the thing is, we like to all call ourselves progressives, or we like to all call ourselves liberals, but you don't really know what that means. These are all subjective terminologies, and they mean something different to everybody. You know what I'm saying? And so, like I always tell people, like labels are helpful shortcuts, but they're not very informative. You know, and so you got to be careful with that. But and so I guess my segue question there then is, if we know that non-belief, whether it's black non-belief, white non-belief, Hispanic non-belief, and so on, you know, a better way to say that, because mixing up some stuff. Let's do this: African non-belief, Hispanic non-belief, European non-belief. That worked better, right? For symmetry, for parallelism, and even still, that's okay. Anyway, but because we know that non-belief is not always going to equal atheism, how do we in the secular community create room for those non-believers who are still on the spectrum? That is so good. Because we're all on the spectrum of belief or non-belief in some way, you know. All right, but and again, and that's just from a strategy point of view. You know what I'm saying? Honestly, you want those non-believers who still believe in woo to feel more comfortable in the communities we create, because that helps to accelerate secularism. All right, so let's jump back to the article. I took one hell of a rabbit trail. All right, so by examining what different subpopulations of non religious people view as policy priorities for secular organizations, it becomes evident that what is considered a secular issue depends on who is asked. It's kind of like I was just saying about the idea, you know, we all know that we're liberals, or we all know that we're progressives, but then when you talk about what is considered a progressive issue, that depending on who you ask, the scope of that question will be constricted or expanded. You know, for example, me, I tend to think globally, um, and which is a challenge for me because I'm not as informed on global things as I'd like to, which also means that I can't come to decisions as fast as other people do, because just because I don't know what's happening over there doesn't make me feel like I should just be like, all right, well, let's just make this decision in spite of not, you know, I'm like, no, I want to know. So I want to fill that knowledge gap. Um, but no, so I thought that was good. Sorry. Because most secular organizations and indeed the movement as a whole have been dominated by white men, the priorities of white men have had an outsized focus. Organizations can change this dynamic by focusing on intersectional issues that have a disproportionate impact on Black non-religious people. Just like everyone else, Black non-religious people tend to prioritize policy issues that directly impact them, their families, and their communities. And this is something that not just the secular community needs to learn, which again, all communities are technically secular communities. That's just it's a whole nother other conversation. But this is a big thing that we do need to wrestle with. And this is one of the reasons why I am not as vocal on politics as other people are. It's number one, my opinions are highly controversial. But then number two, I don't like I don't like playground politics. Like I don't care how right you think you are. The moment we get to that place where we're literally talking about stuff that doesn't matter as if it does matter, while not talking about the stuff that actually does matter, then I'm no longer interested in the conversation. Um, I've never really been into sensationalism, you know. It's not a thing for me. So it's just like, you tell me all the bad things a person has done on either side, I'm not interested, you know. Number one, I'm not the court of law. And and that's one thing that you're gonna have to understand a lot of times when you're talking to some Black people, especially those who think like me. Like, anytime you ask me to get mad about the stuff you're mad about, I'm going to have to think about how many times my community has asked you to get mad about the stuff that we were mad about, and we were told to put our issues on the back burner, you know. But a part of that is you have to understand, like, otherwise you're engaging the world superstitiously, that just because an issue is important to you doesn't mean that issue holds the same place of importance for other people. It doesn't mean that they don't care about that issue, but it does mean that other people have their own priorities that are based off of their lived experiences. And if we would really want to be more inclusive, we have to stop minimizing other people's priorities in deference to our own, or in favor of our own. Nobody should have to tell you that's blindly selfish. And then let's just be honest. What a lot of communities tend to do to Black communities, and I'm sure we're not the only ones this happened to, is to basically say, well, you just don't know any better. Trust me. And it's like, motherfucker, you've never lived my life. You've never lived in my community. You didn't live with my parents. You didn't live with my grandparents. You didn't live with their great grandparents. I am the result of several 100,000 of people's lived experience. And I have a front row seat of this life. So there's nothing that you have learned about the world and your life that gives you any special insight on my life and the world that I live in. Now, that's just a basic human reality, which means you don't learn about other people's experiences by telling them. You learn by asking and listening. Learning and listening are highly correlated. They're like what we call peas in a pod type of thing. All right. So secular organizations must be aware of and responses to these preferences when setting their advocacy goals. And so it's just like, be careful in coming up into things where you're just like, oh, I know what Black people really need. Let's just do this. And I think we kind of talked about that last week. And I'm like, nah, don't do that. Don't do that. And that's not even just a racial thing. Stop doing that to people, period. Stop thinking that you're a fucking psychic and that you know what other people need. If they're not deaf, mute, and dumb, then you can just ask them and enable them, empower them to interrogate their own lives and trust their own decisions to say, I think this is what we need, because they're going to have a better view than you. And again, you just do that with everybody. I encourage companies to do this when they do employee appreciations and or they want to do a special employee recognition, and I'm like, okay, we no longer live in the world where we don't know how to talk to each other anymore. So stop forcing people to smile at shit that they never asked for. You know what I'm saying? Because like it's a very backwards way of engaging. And again, so this isn't just racial. We see this a lot. I see employee recognition ceremonies where a team of senior leaders get together in a room and determine how to best recognize these employees, what these employees are going to want the most, without ever actually surveying or asking directly those employees, hey, how would you like to be recognized? You know what I'm saying? Like, typically, that's one of the conversations I have anytime I take over a team is, how do you like to receive feedback, whether positive or negative? I need to know, are you comfortable receiving it openly? Do you like to receive it privately? Or are you one of those people who just don't like feedback? Because there are people that way. And this goes to just removing ourselves from assuming any type of prototypical norm about anybody, and starting to treat people and respect all people as individuals, as autonomous individuals who you may not be able to guess what the fuck they want. And so ask them, include them in the conversation. We are no longer children. We don't need to be surprised, you know. But okay, sorry. It's a passion point because we don't realize how much friction that creates. And then if your point was to appreciate the person, most times that's not what the person feels. Most time the person feels kind of like highlighted, called out, and embarrassed, and they feel like, again, they feel like they have to, because of respectability politics, they have to smile and be happy about something that they're not actually happy about, you know. And so again, that even stems to family gift giving, which I think we've talked about this on our Sunday sessions. The big point is, stop doing unto others as you would have them do unto you, and do unto others as they want to be done unto them. Ask them, get their input on what they want, you know. I'm a big advocate of that in gift giving communities. Um, you have to measure whether you're doing this for them or for you. And what you begin to figure out is that most people are giving gifts for themselves, which is kind of selfish, you know. And then those people end up getting the most offended when the person doesn't like the gift, you know. And it's just like, well, you actually never really cared about whether what you wanted them to like it because you got it, not like it because they wanted it. And that's backwards as fuck. All right, let's roll on. Be responsive to the needs of Black non-religious members in terms of your activities, goals, and accessibility. The U.S. Secular Survey data shows that Black participants were likely to be younger than other participants and that many are raising children. I'm kind of younger, and I am raising children. Moreover, because of the long history of racism and segregation in America, Black people in general are likely to have a lower income than other racial groups and to live in different neighborhoods, often with less access to transportation. And this is a very, very real reality. And this is a part of. There's so much that goes into play into this. There's systemic racism. There's bias. There's favoritism. Um, there's those gravitational differences. Um, there's so much that the people who created this problem, that used to be known as the Negro problem in the U.S., there's so much that the people who created this problem didn't understand about sociocultural dynamics that that the things we have to do to fix this is real fucking work. And so if you're looking for just a token approach, if you're trying to handle this the way American politics have handled this, then you're already preparing to fail. Because American politics, when it comes to the Black community, have failed. Those are my opinions. I understand they're subjective, but I also believe they are highly well informed. And I mean, the data just kind of shows what it is. Anytime there's a political win for the Black community, it's always more anecdotal than measurable. And there's a reason for that. There's actually a slew of reasons for that. But that's all of these complications. But a part of understanding that nuance means understanding that there are people who could be doing the exact same level of work as you, the exact same type of work as you, and can't eat at the places you eat at, can't live at in the neighborhood you live in, can't drive the cars that you drive, all things being equal. I'm not talking about, somebody who's out there and is just not trying. Nope. I'm talking about somebody, all things being equal, they're working the exact same positions you are in a company that's the exact same size you are. And there's that big income difference. And the reason I'm glad they highlighted that, because we don't really understand how much economic dynamics play into comfort levels, when interacting with others. That lack of mindfulness, because, you may think like, oh yeah, I'm a project manager and I get paid, six figures. And so because you think like that, which is not, it's not that you're thinking like that, it's just that's your reality, right? And you figure out, oh yeah, Darante's a project manager too. So, and so in your mind, it's not happening on a very conscious level, but in your mind, him and I we're in a similar career league. And so you may say, hey man, after such and such, let's go to this really expensive restaurant. And then I either have to avoid, which I'm not. I'm just going to tell you, hey, bro, I can't afford that. That's not in my budget. I don't have the margin for that. And sometimes that makes other people uncomfortable. It's just like, hey, I'm just being honest with you. And I'm like, yeah, all of this costs more for me than it does for you. Just be mindful of that. Oh man, that's good stuff. Um, And so it is being mindful of that because it's not even just about the income. At that moment, it's about the fellowship opportunities, right? So then if all of your gatherings are high cost, and again, the survey results, younger and raising children. So if all of your events are high cost and they don't have anything targeted for children, because the majority of your events are targeted for people who are 60 and older, then that's going to be a problem, you know. And when I say problem, that's probably not the best word to use. That's not going to get you a lot of black young folk in the door who got kids, Um, and that's one of the reasons why churches excel at building community, and secular communities are only just starting to do that because they have free events every week that include something for the kids, you know. And I'm like, I don't understand why we're not doing that. I'm aiming to do that. I started a whole school out of my house. I don't understand why we're not doing more of that. We should be. If why I don't understand how we keep complaining about the education in this country and don't use the power of community to help supplement it. You know, because churches, and their superstition, that's what they're doing. They're teaching those kids as much about the Bible as they can, poorly, obviously, because then kids go through like decades of Sunday school or whatnot and Bible study and still come out not knowing a damn thing about the Bible. You know, hell, I think people have learned more from the atheist community about the Bible than they've learned in their whole lives. But no, this is good stuff. Okay. Um, but yeah, so those are things to be mindful of, you know. If all the events are going to be high cost, you're already fighting a losing battle. Not because black people are poor, not because black people are not working, but black people's work has traditionally not been valued properly in this country, and you you got to understand the far-reaching implications of that. I mean, like even when you go back to stuff like redlining. And people like to simplify redlining to meaning, oh, that just meant black people couldn't move into certain neighborhoods. I promise you, if that was the only problem, it wouldn't be that a big deal for for black folks. Because honestly, we not chasing after y'all like that anyway, you know. Um, but no, the big issue with redlining was not just that black people were prevented from living in other neighborhoods. It was that their property wasn't valued the way other neighborhoods' properties were valued, even if their house was right next door to that other neighborhood, the red line. That has far reaching implications, such as your next door neighbor who works at the same, working class job as you do, you know, likely works a few less hours because you have to put in more overtime to take care of everything, you know, gets to the point where your children grow up, their children grow up. You and your children have to work in order to put them through college, you know. And the people on the other side, they can mortgage their house and pay for their children's college. It's those type of far-reaching implications that don't get wrestled with. And so you say, well, but yeah, but these things happened a few years ago. Yeah, but see, the thing is, when it comes to things happening, it's the fact that they happen. That's the problem. Like when something happens, just because it happened a long time ago doesn't remove its consequences. And consequences are far reaching. You know what I'm saying? Like, for example, several billion years ago, a star exploded. People are still being born on this planet as a consequence of that explosion. Just throwing it out there. Okay, so therefore, local organizations that seek to successfully engage Black non-religious, where am I at? Black non-religious people should work to increase accessibility and provide programming that is suitable for people with children. Moreover, Black participants were significantly more likely than other participants to have participated in social and volunteer events, so these might be areas of focus. Although it is especially important for groups to be open to suggestion and feedback on activities from their Black members. And yeah, like that's a membership rule. If you should be getting feedback from all of your members, Black, white, whatever, you know. And the moment, and because I've done the same thing as a Black pastor, the moment you realize that the dynamics of your community is changing, don't wait for it to create friction. You know what I'm saying? Be willing to be proactive and say, "Oh man, I realize we got some groups coming in, and it's going to be awkward. I mean, there's no way around it, unless you're just cool like that. And some people are, but most of you are not. You know what I'm saying? So let's just be real. It's just going to be awkward, but there ain't no way to do it. But to do it, we're going to have these conversations. And you're going to have to find a way to say, hey, we want to make sure we can be as inclusive as possible. And really, likely the best way to do that is just to go ahead and build it into your systems. Build it into your systems. Right now, if your organization is exclusively right now just one type of shade, then ask yourself, on the first day that we have other shades coming in here, what do we want to already be in place that can help them feel comfortable providing their input and feedback? You know? And so then finally, groups should understand that not every activity needs to have broad appeal in order to be successful. Offering diverse opportunities for participation and engagement can help make organizations more inclusive, particularly if some activities are especially relevant to Black members, women, or other subsets of the membership. And I love that. This is pretty good. There's some quotes here that I do want to read. It said, "I kept it hidden because I had never met another Black person who did not believe in a God. I knew I would be ostracized. Then I attended a sci-fi Comic-Con conference many years ago and was completely shocked to see the Black Nonbelievers had a booth at the conference. That changed everything for me. That was a defining moment for me because I knew there were others like me." And that's beautiful. I feel like I read that one last week, but I don't know. I don't know. But it's worth reading again. And then I want to read this one as well. "I just wish more Black Americans who are non-religious would speak out and create a network for people like me to get together. I love being the catalyst of change, but I am alone in my fight, and I don't know how much more fight I have in me." Yep, I remember that brother. So I did read that one last week, but it was worth it. All right, and so this last little section is build connections with Black Nonbelievers, Inc., and other national or local organizations that serve Black non-religious communities. Despite the terrific national organizations like Black Nonbelievers and the many local Black non-religious groups that serve Black non-religious people across the country, most local secular organizations are not well connected to these groups. That is something that I am personally working to change, something I am invested in changing. We recommend that other local secular organizations reach out to local groups for Black non-religious people and find ways to partner with them on events and activities. If there is no local Black Nonbelievers chapter in an area and Black members of another local secular group are interested in forming a chapter, the local secular group may be able to provide space and other resources to help them do so. And this is something that I've actually been advocating for a while. This is just smart. This is how you support your members. And even though I'm obviously a Black person and we're building community, but even in the community that we're building, we plan on creating space for people to be supported by other communities as well. So even on our Discord channel, we have our Discord server, we have a channel that's for people who are Black and are non-believers, so they have their safe space. My goal for that is for those people to be able to eventually encourage each other to start forming local Black non-believer chapters wherever they are, that can be fully supported by our organization and supported by Black non-believers. But then it also allows us to offer stuff like recovering from religion. It's just smart like, and I tend to take a more holistic perspective. It's just smart. Right. So as the bridge is growing, if we had a physical campus here, then on our physical campus throughout the week, why not have space for people who are recovering from religion to have their support group meetings in that space, for people who are part of Black non-believers to do their support meetings and to do their mission type stuff, volunteer work. Like we got to get out of this competition mentality, and it's not always competition, even though sometimes it is. Let's be honest. But it's almost like I'm gonna do my thing, you do your thing, and it's just like, the more we can interweave these things together, the stronger we can build, and the faster we can build. And that's me. I want to build strong and fast. I want to go far, and I want to go fast. And we can do that autonomously and together, and that's the goal. So I love this. All right. Yes. Okay. We also recommend that established secular organizations support these organizations financially so that they are better to provide resources that are lacking for Black non-religious people. And yes, this is true. We also recommend that secular organizations work to support and build relationships with other local organizations with compatible goals led by people of color. Secular organizations that broaden their policy agenda to work on intersectional issues that disproportionately affect Black non-religious people may be able to better align with and support the advocacy of groups such as local NAACP chapters, Movement for Black Lives groups, Southern on New Ground Song, and others. I'm going to say I'm not a fan of the NAACP. Leave them motherfuckers alone. Okay, let me stop. That's just to hood me for a moment. But no, I'm not a fan of the NAACP. There may be some local chapters that have done some great things in other places. I just haven't seen it. But there are plenty of Black groups to support. Again, Black Nonbelievers is one of them and is really kind of the premier group that's out there doing stuff specifically for Black non-religious people. My community is also one. The only difference is we're not specifically targeting just Black folk. I just so happen to be Black, and I'm going to say a lot of Black stuff. I am blackity black, black, black. Many of you know I'm unapologetically, I've talked about my bouts with Black nationalism and Black consciousness. It's a major part of who I am. It is my Blackness that gave me the strength and the courage to embrace my humanity. And so while that's not my target audience, obviously, because I'm Black and I enjoy being Black and I enjoy talking about topics that impact Black people, a lot of Black folk are going to be attracted here as well. But I did want to make the caveat, if you're looking to support organizations that have specifically made it their goal to support Black non-believers, and that's their mission, then Black Nonbelievers is the organization to support. And that's why I'm supporting Black Nonbelievers. I mean, it makes sense to me, right? But another thing that I wanted to add, um, dear white folk, please understand, and we say this a lot, but nobody, it doesn't always get lived out in practice. Black people, just like white people, are an incredibly diverse breed of people. Probably shouldn't have used the word breed there. But we are very diverse. Resist the urge to collect all of the black people who look and act and talk alike. Resist the urge to try to gather up all the black people who agree. That's not real inclusivity. You know, at that moment, it's just like it becomes clear that you're looking for a certain type of black. You know, and that goes a bunch of different ways. I know immediately that probably evokes some imagery for people, but that goes different ways. Because I've seen it. Uh, just in life, I've seen it. All right. Provide resources and support for people who are newly leaving religion. That's a big thing for me. And I think that's probably going to be one of the biggest things that help us accelerate people leaving religion. Data from the U.S. Secular Survey shows that Black participants, on average, had identified as non-religious for less time than other participants. This is true because even many of the people who support my channel have been identifying as non-religious for 30, 40, 50 years. And for me, it's just been a decade. Moreover, research on this population shows that many Black non-religious people do not identify with labels such as atheist or humanist because they are not as familiar with the use of those terms within their communities. Therefore, Black non-religious people may especially benefit from resources and support that organizations provide to help individuals deal with the difficulties of newly coming to terms with their non-religious belief. This may include emotional support, mentorship, information about supportive therapists, and helping young people who have been rejected by their families. And this is why, like, if you're serious about building secular community, right? And you're serious about building secular community that is present, that is visible, and that is actually helpful, you're gonna have to revisit the church structure. I'm not saying you got to do what churches are doing, but you're gonna have to revisit the church service, the church structure. People are gonna need that weekly engagement opportunities, you know, um, and people are going, they're gonna want something that their kids can do weekly. This is how you give them This is how you give them an exit ramp. Oh man, I was given that illustration before about being in the when you're in deconstruction. It's like going around and going around and going around until you see an exit door. And the exit door for many people is going to see the advent of them seeing the advent of secular communities, places that really is you can come as you are, places that really are people centric, places that really are non-judgmental. The secular community has an advantage there and isn't taking advantage of it. You know, we have the ability to craft high engaging, incredibly helpful, and incredibly fun communities that make it easier for people to deal with the isolation of coming to terms with their non-belief. Similarly, secular organizations should ensure that published resources, advertisement, and outreach materials include images and other representation of Black non-religious people to help counter stereotypes and normalize atheism among this population. And I know what most people are tempted to do there is to go out and get some stock images. Don't do that shit. Don't do that. Go out and build some genuine relationships, you know? And then take pictures of reality. And that's your best way. Please don't try to fudge that imagery, because you're almost always going to miss with the messaging on that. I can damn near guarantee it. And so don't representation is so important. And actually, I've seen quite a few of our secular communities do very well with this. I've seen a few that are making those moves to having more Black people represented in the leadership, because that was an area that the churches were failing in majorly. Because people say, oh, no, there's a lot of mixed churches out there. There's a lot of mixed congregations. There's a difference. You know what I'm saying? So in a lot of those churches, like when the church is Black led, you find a nuance, especially if it has a mixed congregation. You find a myriad of different colors on the leadership team when the church is led by a Black pastor. 98% of the times when the church is led by a white pastor, regardless of how integrated and to be honest, this has changed significantly within the last 15 years, partly because more people started speaking to it. But significantly, 98% of those churches, even when significantly mixed, their leadership was 90% white folk, with the exception of the musical leadership or the outreach leadership. Very common, very common. There was a white pastor who was kind of one of the pioneers in kind of shaping that imagery. His name was Ron Carpenter, even though his wife did later get in trouble for saying a bunch of racist stuff, and so they had to move to California. But that's a whole, like when you think about the things that happen in the church world, like it makes some great television, man. Great television. All right, so I think I've hit everything in this one. Let me make sure. This is another quote. I only started using the term atheist in the last year or so. I definitely feel like it's affected my relationship with my in-laws, and I've realized I'm hesitant to let, for instance, my psychiatrist know, even though it's a hard topic to avoid for various reasons, out of fear that it will affect my medication. And like that's a very real thing for someone to be afraid of. And that's not the world we want people to have to live in. We want people to be able to get the help they need and not have to pretend to be something else, and not having to be their honest selves, and someone says, oh, something must be wrong with you. And coming from a Black man who lives in the South, which I didn't see if this person was in California. As a Black man who lives in the South, that's what I dealt with. I mean, everybody just assumed that I was crazy. People still assume that I'm crazy. I don't give a damn, because my life has improved. Like I lost the weight, my family's stronger, doing better, kids are doing better. I may be working my ass off right now, and honestly, I am. But my life is doing better. I am one of those people who believe that the only true sign of intelligence is a changed life, you know. But so I don't give a damn what those other people think, but especially when you're already being stigmatized, that's hard, you know. Another Mel from New Mexico says, but personally, the atheist groups and podcasts and Jehovah's Witnesses Reddit subreddit has helped a lot. Would have probably been lost without those resources. We need more things like that, though, because I can't seem to find anything local and in person to turn and in person to turn to while I'm a single atheist. Oh man, I wish if this was my Think Responsibility segment, I dig into this a little more, because there's some extra stuff in there. There's some nuance, but that's not the purpose of this particular one, so I won't dig too deep. But I will say this, yeah, we need more resources, and then we need more people finding ways to make those resources more easily available in a local aspect, you know. Utilize your community libraries. Just put up a flyer that says, you know, local free thinkers club, you know, and if you build it, they will come, or they'll tear it down. I'm just playing. That was a question on Kahoot recently. All right. Well, I do think I have hit everything in this. We finally closed this up. I'm actually going to be excited about continuing this series. And so the next one of these that I'll do, I'll be talking a little bit more about my thoughts, and a little bit more about some Black non-believers that I've wanted to talk about for a while. Obviously, we've already had some great conversations about W.B. Du Bois, Zora Neale Hurston, but I'm going to be bringing in some more. Because which Zora's work did a really good job of that, of exploring the nuance of Black non-belief, um, so this is going to be good. I Let me make sure I don't have anything else. Please, if you've never checked out the work of Black non-believers, go do so. I have the links in the description. And also consider donating to Black non-believers. You know, they're a great organization. I want to see their organization go further. And I want to pour into their organization more myself. As our community grows, I want to make sure that the Black people in my community are fully supported and are fully connected to Black non-believers and all the way down. So let's change the world by working together to build the society that we want to live in. All right. That's all I got. Thank y'all for hanging out with me. Until next time. Oh, no. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that alert notification bell. Consider joining, supporting, or connecting with this community channel or content in any way that makes sense for you. And check out the merch because it's dope. Also, we have books on Amazon, and you just type in our name. They're there. Christ Held Up is my most recent book. It's that way. Is my most recent book. And it's actually kind of selling like hotcakes now. So I'm really excited about that. And it's a helpful tool. If you want to have more compassionate conversations who believe that the magical sky pimp is coming back sometime soon, this book is a helpful tool to help you have that conversation without saying condescending stuff like the magical sky pimp. Check it out. All right, that's all I have. Thank you all for hanging out. Until next time, keep rising, stay progressive, and if you can, stay beautiful. I'll holler at you later.